creating experiences that are intentional is about being in the moment. And that's the only way that we can connect with people.
Pros and cons.
Welcome to Pros and Cons, Engagement Unplugged. Today is a conversation all about Crossroads moments. And I'm Brian Rowley.
And I'm Laura Smith. Today we're going to dig into a topic that most marketers will face at some point in their career. What happens when your brand finds itself at a crossroads? These moments can show up in all kinds of ways. Maybe it's a rebrand, a shift in business strategy, or responding to a crisis. Sometimes just keeping up with customer expectations. And when you're in the middle of it, the big question becomes, how do you decide what to do next?
And I think, Laura, that's actually a really interesting part of it, right? Like, how much does emotion play into those decisions? And when is it smart to play it safe? And when is it worth sort of taking a risk? And today we're actually joined by a very special guest of ours, someone who's sort of helped some of the world's biggest brands sort of rewire how they think about performance, perspective, people, and the ways in which they connect with customers. And we'll explore everything from brands taking risks to influences that they have and how they help people or ways in which they make people feel.
But before we get into the heart of today's episode, we're kicking things off with something we call In the Moment. Are you ready? It's a quick take that ties in today's theme and gets us all thinking. Since we're talking how emotion influences decisions, here's one we're going to start with. Brian, what's the best ad or commercial that's ever gripped your emotions? Might have made you laugh, tear up, or just take action.
Well, I think anybody that actually knows me knows that I'm a big, big fan of the Nike brand. And I think one of the most powerful ads that I've seen from them was one that they did in regards to finding your greatness. And it was all centered around just ordinary people doing extraordinary things and encountering sort of obstacles, but not only just obstacles, but actually how they overcame them. And it was actually kind of interesting because Nike did this at a point where I believe they were not selected as one of the sponsors or chose not to be a part of the Olympics. And the reason they came out with this particular ad was to show that it doesn't always require a medal in order for you to get your greatness, that people can achieve that every day. And it was just some really powerful things in ways in which people sort of overcame those obstacles. So it was actually one of my favorites and continues to be. And I think Nike in general does a really good job when it comes to their ads and making them really personal and creating sort of that emotion within its viewers. But I'm curious, how about yourself?
Well, before I dive in, what was the emotion you feel though when you listen to that ad or you watch that ad? Like, is it?
I think it's a moment of just accomplishment, to be honest with you. Like, you felt like anything was achievable. I mean, that's obviously what it was, right? Achieving greatness, but it was actually it was accomplishment, and seeing people who had various challenges be able to overcome that and the emotion that it incurred in them in doing that was really, really powerful. So let's not skip my question, which you do all the time, but let's just get back to, and how about yourself?
Okay. So mine was surrounding World Mental Health Day, and it's of two gentlemen watching a Norwich City Football Club. They're going to the game week to week. They have seats next to each other. And every week, one gentleman comes in and kind of like tries to talk to the guy next to him. And the guy next to him is always pretty he's just melancholy. He's really chill. He's not super happy. Whereas the gentleman that we're focused on is really like super excited, cheering, standing, yelling. And every week to week to week, they kind of play that role. One's super happy and into the game. One's just pretty chill and just not really super happy. And in the end, that really happy gentleman doesn't show up to the game. And what it seems to be is he's no longer with us. And it just really struck that chord of, mental health is around us. Mental health, everyone has not everybody, but people have mental health issues and we don't always know it. So it just struck a chord because it's a really common theme today. And we know this, and whether people in your lives directly or people that may be, extended family or friends may have some issues. It's just so important to remember that you may not know that someone has an issue. So it just struck the chord of like, wow, that's reality, and so it wasn't like, the happiest ad, but it definitely felt like this is a real life situation, and they brought it into a very relatable environment and something that people could take away and probably pause and just think, wow, maybe I should pick up the phone and call somebody to make sure they were okay.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those topics I don't think we talk enough about. And I can tell you that experiencing it in my family and having gone through that and some of what happens to those that are impacted by some of the mental health issues that are out there, they do just need people to talk about it. Like it doesn't change everything. It doesn't make things go away. But just having a conversation and feeling like it's okay to have that conversation does change that. So I applaud any brand, any company, any organization that's actually bringing awareness to that, because I think more needs to sort of help those people that really do struggle every day with it.
Yep, agreed. Okay. That was our In the Moment segment. I want to say it was fun, but it was also very much the reality. So that was a good exchange, Brian. So it is amazing how certain ads can still sit with us after time, right? The ad that I'm talking about, I think may have been a year old, and it wasn't even really a brand, or like, I don't watch football. But it's something that obviously stuck with me, and similarly for you, Brian. And that emotional pull is exactly what we're diving into today. We're talking about what happens when brands find themselves at a crossroads and how emotions shape those pivotal decisions.
Yeah, and I mean, we're really fortunate today to have and to welcome Jez Rose onto our show. For those of you that don't know Jez, he's a best-selling author. He's written multiple books on business leadership, customer experience, and strategies for career success. He's worked with a ton of Fortune 100 companies, helping business leaders sort of shift the perspective and a path for growth, innovation, and resilience. But I will tell you personally, I had the honor of having Jez actually keynote speak a meeting that I held at one time. And I will say that it was one of the most impactful keynotes that I've attended. And it wasn't just my perspective, but it was also those that were there had given me that same feedback. So Jez, welcome to the show. Super happy to have you.
It was a lovely introduction. Thank you very much. I'm excited for this, really, because this will be, if this goes well, it will be the first time that I will not end up in the ER as a result of working with you, Brian.
I was going to let that go, but thanks for bringing that up.
Yeah,
I'm glad he brought it up.
Isn't it? You were going to let it go. Thank you for having me. I'm delighted to be here.
So I mean, just one of the things that was why we wanted to have you be a part of this was obviously you talk a lot about creating intentional experiences. And I was hoping that you, for our audience, could explain exactly what you mean by that, and what role does intentionality play when we're sort of standing at a crossroads? That's
a very good question. I'm a big advocate of conscious living, and there are a number of reasons for that. Firstly, 47% of our waking time is spent on autopilot. We're not consciously thinking about what we're doing. And that to me is remarkable. That means that almost 50%, almost half the time that we're awake, we're not even aware of what we're doing. We're not conscious of it, which probably explains some of the people you work with, perhaps, I don't know. And so this notion of being present and in the moment is a core part of my life, always has been. I've been a Buddhist since I was 15. It sort of dipped in and out of that practice. And it's a core part of Buddhism, this notion of being very much in the present moment. However, park that to one side for a second. From a sort of behavioral perspective, all human behavior is explained by antecedents, behavior, and consequence. So antecedents is the thing that causes behavior, the sort of trigger. And then every behavior has a consequence. That's the A, B, C of human behavior. Well, if we're not conscious, if we're not sort of creating an intentional experience, and I'll come to this in a second in a bit more detail, then we're not ever going to be conscious of what the consequence is, are we? So very often we just respond, we just react. Somebody says something, a cutting remark, a very quick email, you don't pause and think about what the consequence might be or what the best response is. We just do it all the time. So why is it important? Because we're going to die, Brian. Everybody is going the same direction. And we don't like to talk about it. And so we just pretend that it's not going to happen. And then we just let life happen to us. And what began to frustrate me, I lost a lot of people in my life very early on. So I've always been very hypersensitive to life and living it and its fragility. And Laura made the point of that advert. It's an awesome advert. I've seen it so many times. And the lovely twist at the end. You should go seek it out or add it into the show notes or something. It doesn't go where you think it's going to go, right? But why is it that life only changes for people when someone dies? Why do we have to wait to get a cancer diagnosis and then go, gosh, that was a close call, I should change my life now? Why is it that we have to lose our dad and go, oh gosh, maybe I've been too busy making a living and not spending enough time making a life? Why do we wait? So we've got to ask more questions. Now, if we're more intentional, the only way we're going to be able to do that is to be in the moment. This moment right now, as I am talking, as you are listening to my voice, is the only moment that we have any guarantee of. Everything that happened before, we can't do anything about. There's no guarantee about what's going to happen in the future. Literally, this moment here is it. We got to wake up this morning. There was a ton of people that didn't, and a ton of people that didn't expect not to wake up this morning either, right? So when you're at that crossroads, you have to be in the moment in order to understand and appreciate what is the direction you can go in, because we've all made those long plans in business, in life, emotionally, spiritually, financially. The road is never straight. It's just you never go from A to B. You go A, 8.1, 8.5, 7, detour via G, back via H, double skip over Z. We didn't think we were going to get there. Oh, back to B again. It's never in a straight line. So intentionality and creating experiences that are intentional is about being in the moment. And that's the only way that we can connect with people. We can't connect to people's future or people's past because it hasn't happened. What matters to me now is absolutely not what's going to matter to me in 9 minutes' time, possibly, certainly in 3 months' time. So now's all that matters. Does that sort of make sense?
No, it definitely makes sense. And I think the interesting part of it is if we truly live in the moment, there are plenty of warning signs, I would say, before those traumatic moments happen. But I think we're so distracted that we don't always pay attention to those.
Sure.
And as a result of that, it takes that very traumatic moment, in the example that you gave, the loss of life, right, before someone actually makes a change. But I guarantee you that there were plenty of other things that happened prior to that that could have been moments for someone to pivot where they may not have.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, commercially, we talk a lot about, I encourage people to have a plan B, to come up with what's your plan B? In fact, it was a time when I was going to call my business Plan B. And then when I moved to the States, I realized it probably wasn't the best business name. And I asked a ton of people in cafes and stuff. I'd lean over and say, hey, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but if I say Plan B, what does that, what's the first thing that comes up? And I realized that probably asking young couples that question seemed a bit pointed from a stranger. It was as if I was judging their, life
Crazy
choices
man
or something.
joined the cafe too.
And I realized that Plan B probably wasn't the
Stop
best.
doing focus groups at cafes, please.
Yes, with random people. So the thing about this idea of Plan B, what happens if it's not going to work out? Then I tell them to scrap Plan A. Because if you've got Plan B, why would you go with Plan A? Because Plan B has looked at all the ways that Plan A won't work to create a plan that's more solid. And if we were more conscious, if we were more intentional, if we were more aware and alert of what was going on moment by moment, I mean, when that study came out to show that 47% of our waking time are on autopilot, I just thought that explains everything. All the road rage explains all of that. The idiots that just do random stuff and you think, what on earth did you do that for? The emails that you think, oh, that wasn't very well worded, or I don't understand what they mean, or things that people say and do, but also our emotional regulation as well, right? So I think whether it's work or home, or deeply internal for you, deeply personal, being more intentional just means being more in the present moment, and we get so much more control.
Jez, let's bring it back to brands, right? So do you think most brands are intentional? Do you think that they plan for that Plan B, or do you think they spend more time reacting to what's happening around us to then try to get ahead of it. Like that mental health ad, for example, right? So that was something that we know is happening. So, but that could have been reactive because mental health has always been something that's been around us for quite some time, just wasn't discussed as often. So do you think brands that react are the ones that are like losing out, or do you think those brands should be getting ahead of it? And if so, do we think that happens more often than not?
That's a really interesting point. Have you ever been in a conversation and you go to say something and then you don't say it, but then other people say, no, go on. What are you going to say? And you say, no, sort of the moment's past now. That doesn't matter. We overthink being human. And look, risk involves consequences, right? But rarely are they permanent. So do brands lose more if they wait? Yeah, I think they lose more edge, more long-term connection with customers or users, because we aren't necessarily consciously aware that we are living in the moment, but we are. And so if you can directly connect with people in their moment, in this moment, I mean, it's how all of really mainstream media works, right? If you've ever had a press release set up and you've been very excited about your big launch that's happening on Monday, all the press releases have gone out, you've got your radio interview set up, and then on Sunday, something catastrophic happens, well, suddenly your press release is going to get pushed to right at the bottom and you're done and dusted. No one's interested anymore. So we can live like that because brands can think a little more about taking an educated risk. I think we've just got to... I have real concerns and issues, and quite outspoken about, and quite opinionated probably as well, although it comes from a sort of educated background of experience, that we are dehumanizing the way that we connect with consumers and customers. We're far too focused on logistics and processes and all that kind of jazz, and making it easy for the brand under the guise of making it easy for customers. But I think, you lose... I think long term you lose customers. There, I've said it, Laura.
You got your answer.
Scripted.
But Jez, in that sense, right, does emotion actually influence those decisions sort of at those critical times? And I mean, from a business perspective, if you look at that, right, how does a business factor in some of these emotional elements sort of when they're shaping those customer interactions?
I wrote about this in one of the books. I think it was Flip the Switch. I can't remember which one, but back in the US, when television was first released mainstream and invented and offered as this thing, this new thing you can have in your home, it's called a television, you'll love it. The pushback was, we don't have time to watch television. Like, why would anybody, we're not going to have the time for that. We listen to the radio in the evening, and this sound clip is contextualized within the time for what I'm about to say. All the men were away being very busy at work, earning the income for the household. The women were at home, keeping the house, raising the children. Nobody had any time to watch television. What a stupid invention. We fast forward to 2015 is the last stat I have, which admittedly is 10 years old, but when you listen to the stat, you'll know that it's worse now. The average American watched 5 hours of television a day. So, or we in America, I should say, because that makes it sound like it's a bit us and them. And look what happened last time we got into that. You ended up taking the country from us. So the point is that all the time, emotions are influencing our decision making. Whether we're tired or not tired, or whether we're hungry, or whether we have core unmet needs. So businesses particularly need to think about, at what point are they interacting with a customer, and how are they likely to be feeling? Because we're driven by emotion, but we're not great at being in touch with ourselves, let alone regulating our own emotion. When we're tired, we likely reach for easy solutions, instant help. And that becomes habitual, because as a species, we naturally we want to preserve energy. So then we get led to be lazy by brands. So it's all very well saying, okay, this is my target market, for example, or this is where we're going to capture our customers. But at what point, like what time in the morning? What are they likely to be wrapped up in at that time that you're connecting with them? What are the stress levels likely to be? What time differently? Perhaps a different time could you connect with those people, or a different place? Is it on the move, in which case you've got to think about traffic and busyness and stimulation, and perhaps it's better that we capture these people when they're at home and relaxed. And those emotional elements are where, if you find, you were talking earlier about, super successful brand campaigns that make an emotional impact. Well, there are sort of classically babies and children, babies and animals, right, are always going to trigger emotions. Cute and fluffy and cute and vulnerable, right? So those are given. And then you can add into that sick children, and then you've got the sort of holy grail of the emotional triggers, right? Those three elements are always going to trigger customers' needs. Those are the three areas that people give most to charitably. So if you can do it that simply, it just takes a tiny bit more thought, doesn't it, to work out what are these people feeling when they're doing the thing that we want them to be doing. And all of the successful brand campaigns do that. If you look at them from a behavioral perspective, they've got that extra edge to them. They've got that extra element that they've thought about.
Well, that's what I was going to say is, do you think brands know that they're doing that? Do you think that they know that they have the ability to escalate emotions or change someone's emotions? Like, yes, they take into consideration potentially the emotions, but do you think they get it? Do you think that they really do it for the right reasons to help play into trying to get a response out of consumers or whoever they're trying to attract? Because I think I get what you're saying. They know it's dogs or pets and kids, but do they really understand sometimes when they're putting out a brand campaign for their own benefit, right? Trying to drive business. Do they understand what they can actually do and how they can affect consumer behavior?
But they'll say they're aware of it, but they're not. I mean, look, here's an example, right? You need customer support for something. You won't find a telephone number because you're pushed to an online chat, right? And if you're lucky, you get to a human. If you're really lucky, you get a phone number. What's the first message you hear when you ring customer support? We're experiencing an overwhelming number of calls. No, you're not. You're experiencing the same number of calls you'd always had. You're just not employing enough staff. It's as simple as that. So most companies stopped truly caring about customer service a long time ago. There was a massive shift at COVID. And since COVID, it's never changed. No one making these decisions has been through the customer journey. That's evident. So how does the customer feel is not a question enough organizations ask. I've consulted with 93 of the Fortune 100 businesses. I've spent 22 years as a behavior advisor for the corporate industry. We are sentient beings. There's far too much weight and thinking on customer flow and efficiency, which actually is about managing customers easier for the company. It's nothing to do with the customer themselves, and not nearly enough consideration on how we're making people feel. So, yeah, I think brands unintentionally escalate emotion, but they don't understand, why they're doing it or how they're doing it. But they also have the role to ease that as well. It's just that the problem with all of this area, Laura, is that I don't know where Brian's gone. The problem with all of this, Laura. Well, yeah,
it's his nap time. This is
thanks for waking me up. Sorry, I just got a little Jez. Go ahead, keep going. This is riveting.
When I say, I'd love to say I've missed you. When I say this, I mean psychology, behavior, all of these sort of slightly more cerebral elements of customer. The problem is, Laura, it's really different. There's nothing tangible. If I say make that orange, that widget, that color, that brand, that whatever, and 9% more people are going to click on it, right? Then you can visually see that, you can see the difference, and then you can metrically support it as well. We're talking about feelings and thoughts, they're visceral, right? There's nothing tangible. You're relying on the hope that about that emotion. And so it's difficult. You have to wait. And businesses aren't very good at waiting anymore. We kind of want instantaneous ROI, or at least some, confirmation about that. So I think that's why we don't see it as much. But my concern is, look what happened to the reoffending rate. Both in the US and the UK, I have figures for. And the reoffending rate is insane, which tells you that when people go to prison, it's not an effective punishment. because they carry on reoffending. So the system's broken. And why? Well, I can tell you that, and any psychologist and behaviorist will tell you why, because the punishment comes way too late after the behavior, and that big gap there doesn't link the punishment directly with the behavior. So, if I tripped up an old lady and ran off with her handbag and got punched in the face, it's unlikely I would do that again anytime soon. If I trip up an old lady, run off with her handbag, and 9 months later I have to spend some time in jail, there's a whole 9 months where I've enjoyed my life, right? And the cash and the boiled sweets. So there are issues, I think, with linking that brands have, with linking what's happening in this moment, in this time, and what's the result of it. And that gap there is, I think, difficult for them to see the point in engaging with anything like, emotion or asking about how customers feel. So I think, they will blame customer complaints on, I don't know, the process isn't smooth enough or something. But it's not. It's just because you really rile me up when I've got a problem and you're not going to help me. But you actually make it more difficult for me to find somebody to help me. I've got to go to a bot, and then I've got to ask the bot to speak to a human, and then I've got to speak to a human who goes 9 minutes of questions only to go, oh, you want a pay-per-month plan? Oh, sorry, we only do the pay-as-you-go. You need to call this number instead.
But Jez, where do you think the line is between customer experience and emotional well-being, right? Because there's definitely a line I think that brands sort of hover over, right? Where, okay, we're worrying about frustrating, aggravation, all of those types of things, but where is that line, or is there not a line? We're on a podcast. We've only got a little bit of a time.
I don't know how. No, I'm going to be honest. I've decided this year is my year of authenticity. So strap in,
up, Laura.
Joey, get ready to mute.
Yeah.
I'm ready.
So the social media industry had a big wake-up call to this, right? Social media is ever evolving. It's new to all of us. It's changing how we think and feel and behave, interact, socialize. And it's a new cause of fear of missing out, FOMO, of depression, and suicide, right? So those are major responsibilities and issues. And therefore, the social media industry they were forced to think about emotional well-being. They didn't get a choice of that, right? Now, they didn't intend to create something that would make us feel more depressed and horrible and, make our lives, for some people, difficult, but at the same time, for some people, brilliant. And now you've got this weird incongruence, right? There's this thing that is as brilliant as it is tragic. But behind anger, if I feel angry or you feel stressed, for example, there are a ton of other emotions like jealousy and sadness and frustration, helplessness, shame, feeling overwhelmed. These are all causes of that anger or stress. We respond to the anger or the stress, the initial, thing that we present. But the cause of it is what we need to be, addressing. So what do we do with those feelings? Well, most people reach outward to resolve or comfort them. We buy things for the alpha brainwave and dopamine here, even though it's short-lived. We'll eat comfort foods, we reach outwards, right? We see a whole wealth of marketing that's preying on our emotional needs, making it easier to buy, easier to consume, and therefore easier to cover everything up instead of dealing with our need to rediscover our core unmet needs. So, yeah, brands need to take much more ownership of the emotional well-being of their customers if they want to be better people and live more ethically. But try telling that to a board of investors who only care about money because they don't understand what truly matters in life, and that some of the happiest people alive have nothing. So I know that's quite a sort of a pointed answer, and it's not opinionated. That's sort of fact. It's a little broad, but it is fact. So will they is an interesting question. I suspect not. I think we've still got a bit longer for this. We need the equivalent of the social media issue. I just hope it doesn't get to the point that there's this ton of evidence that suggests that brands or via certain marketing makes people desperately unhappy. And then, we've had to cause a lot of pain in order to say, oh, actually, maybe we should do it a bit different. But the only thing I don't know about the US. The only thing we have in the UK is the Advertising Standards Agency, but really they regulate sort of over-promising or, sort of false messaging or something, not necessarily the ethics of, is this the right thing we should be doing? I mean, if you think about it, also look at the sort of trend that we had for years, the misogynistic trend of scantily clad women draped over cars or something to sell the cars to men. Well, it wasn't the sort of emotional well-being that we thought about. It was equality, actually, wasn't it? It was, well, isn't that a bit derogatory towards women and derisory? And again, that came from a different perspective to challenge that. So I think it's a really interesting question. Where is the line between customer experience and emotional well-being? And I would argue there isn't one. Because if we start separating things as important as emotional well-being, well, then it becomes an other, doesn't it? And it isn't other, it's one. The customer's experience is their emotional well-being,
right?
Whether they're aware or not.
Sorry to interrupt, but I'm going to. But I know from my own customer experience perspective, right? If I have a great experience, someone I send an email, I do something, I interact, I want like some refund, I want something, a problem to be solved, and that is solved very seamlessly. I am a happy person and I'm on my way to do other things in life,
Sure.
right? Opposite of that, if it's a really frustrating experience, that could affect my whole day.
Yes.
I'm set off in a way. So it's what you're saying is 100%. I can relate as a consumer myself that it can really shift my mindset. And being in marketing, of course, you even get more frustrated because you understand how important customer experience is. But as a consumer, I'd agree that it could make me a happier person because I just had a wonderful experience, or it could turn my day around because I just dealt with so much frustration, even though that's in my personal life, but then it brings back even into my professional life where I've got to now, be happy with the people I work with and just pretend like that doesn't happen. But it's hard to control, I would say.
But I also think the other side to it too is we spend a lot of time focused on experience. But I think when you boil that back to truly get to the root of emotional well-being, I'm not sure that there's a lot of brands that are out there, to be honest, that sit there and say, I wonder what the longer term impact of this contact with this customer would actually be. They think about it from the immediacy of, will it trigger a buying behavior, and not think about the longer term side to things. So I think it's a very different perspective in regards to marketing as a whole that I'm not sure a lot of brands and at every moment think about, or even think about at all, to be honest.
Yeah, I would agree. And that sort of feeds into a bigger, wider social issue, doesn't it? We're being driven to become actually more selfish. We don't think about us broadly anymore. We think about me. What's in it for me? And that has much wider social and political issues as well. So should they? Yeah, I think they should. Why? Because there's an ethical thing. There's all of the good stuff, right? But someone's going to say, well, that's optional. But then customer service used to be optional for a long time. It was if you've got time, don't forget to smile or say have a good day or whatever. Then, of course, the rise of power of customers came. We went through that transition of people moving with their feet. All industries became much more competitive due to social media landscapes and the changing commerce. And so now we had greater competition. So people had to work harder for customer attention, let alone customer buying power. And so customer service is the obvious thing. As Laura said, let's make people feel great about our brand and also make them feel even better about dealing with us. I think we're in what I would call the used car sales period of consumerism right now. So the thing is, when you buy a car, you're like the Messiah when you walk into a car showroom, aren't you? They could not be happier to see you. They are like, absolutely. Would you like coffee, flowers? Let me be all over you. Lick your ears. I see you've got a bit of wax in there. Let me get in there with the tip of my tongue. They're all over. Take your pants off, sir. I'll iron those. They could not be, oh, your hands look a little chafed. I've got some moisturizer. Come here. Let me give you a little mani. They're all over you. They will do anything to get that car. You drive out of the showroom and something goes wrong with that car. You are the scum on their shoe. Like, who the hell? You go in and you will get spat at for coming back. Who do you think you are coming back here? You've got the car, you little cretin. And that, I think, is possibly come over a little opinionated there.
Just a skosh.
A little bit over the line. Stepped over the line a few times there.
Yeah. Oh,
There's
Laura
that
talking
line.
about lines. Yeah. Yeah. What a deep-seated irony. But the point is that sort of, for me, feels like the general temperature check of all experience at the minute. We're desperate to get the customer in at the top end. We'll do anything. That lovely brand experience, the marketing, the soft landing, the sale, the discount, the sexy packaging, and then the lights go off. Soon as something happens or you need to interact with that organization, it is not easy. And you're right, Laura, the ones that stand out, bizarrely, one of them for me is an online bank. Phenomenal. The last place you would think anybody would be useful. And I think we're in that period for a bit longer until people start, again, consumers move for their feet or talk. And so sort of to your point about this notion of, what was your point you were making, Brian? No, about experiences. I think it's important because it directly feeds into customer service and customer experience. If you are... they don't know. This is the thing. It's deeply clever psychology, this. I'm just trying to think in my head how comfortable I feel about sharing this because it sort of feels a little... I could understand somebody pushing back and saying, is this sort of deceptive or brainwashing or whatever? But as I'm not being paid for this podcast, which I think I have raised once or twice before, I'll say it anyway. I think... if you know how someone feels at any given time, or the risk of how they could feel, or how you need them to feel, you can do lots of different things to be able to mold and manage and shape that experience for the better in order to enhance the overall experience they have with you now, but long term. Because you ever see like those movies? I'll stop talking in a second. I appreciate this is a long answer, but you ever see those movies where they drop something into the water and suddenly everybody loves a brand? Or it's like sort of those not disaster movies. It's like there is a movie I watched ages ago. I can't think of what it is, but they gave everyone a pill or added something to the water or food or something, and it secretly changed people's brain and made them all love this particular product or something, and sort of brainwashed them all to buy it. It is sort of the equivalent of that, in so much that we can encourage people to feel differently about something, and they won't know why, but they'll feel much more aligned and safe with that brand. And I think all of everything we've spoken about today comes really back to that word. It's about making consumers feel safe.
But I think, Jez, and this is a whole other conversation, but I think it does also go back to authenticity, because I can give you an example. Starbucks just recently went into a mode where they write nice messages on the cups as people are handing them out, and there's hearts on them, and there's have a great day, and blah, 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 blah. And that works really, really well when the person who's doing it is smiling when they're doing it, right? But when that same person hands you the cup with the little heart that says, have a great day, and they grunt at you, right? It doesn't work, right? No. So I think you also have to instill this understanding throughout the culture of the organization, not just in the way that you approach it from a marketing perspective. Because again, it goes back to, and I know you've talked about this for a long time, but the authentic side to it is also needs to be apparent and needs to come through. Otherwise, it just doesn't work.
Yeah, I would agree. But also, Brian, there is a wider piece there that's interesting for this podcast that I suspect will go global, is that, I've lived in the US now for a year. I've worked here on and off for 10 years. In the US, the tipping culture is standard. It's just, you just do it. It's rude not to tip, irrespective of the level of service you get. In the UK and Europe, for example, you earn a tip. I'm absolutely not going to tip somebody if you just put my food on the table and walk off.
Right.
But you absolutely will here. Minimum 15% now. Even that is kind of sneered at a bit. I went into a store the other day, and the suggested tipping, it was only 3 on the till, unless you went to the bother of pressing other, started at 20%. And the experience in that store was, I would say, substandard. So it's a bit wider, isn't it? It's how we are being shaped. And that's what I mean when I alluded to earlier on in this conversation, that there is a wider cultural influence here. We are being shaped. Our behavior is being modeled, and therefore so is our experience and our emotion as well. It's, trying hard and just saying, okay, don't remember to smile at people. I mean, what utter nonsense. It absolutely is about how do I make that person feel, but everybody has to be a little bit of a pocket psychologist or a pocket behaviorist, don't they, to better understand how you make people feel differently.
Yes.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Okay. It's time to turn up the heat.
Wow, Laura just shut you down.
I'm ready to
She's
move
like,
on. Ready to move on.
Move on.
We are
Let's
moving
go.
into the hot seat
We lost
segment.
Joey, sound asleep. Go ahead.
We're going in the hot seat segment. We're going to ask you a quick.
It's easy for you to say.
Take a quick, bold stance on something. You already have made a few quick, bold stances, so this is going to be easy for you. We'll put you on the spot. There's no pressure. Here we go. What's one thing brands should stop doing if they want to build genuine emotional connections?
Well, I've got 7.
One thing, Jez. One thing. We know you too well.
All right.
1.
Stop scripting. Stop curating. Be human. Be real. It's okay for it to be imperfect. The greatest illusion is that life should be perfect. We did a little bit of research last year and tail end of last year. Actually, it finished in February, so it was sort of this year as well. And what we found was on social media, the posts that got the greatest responses, greatest number of likes, shares, or comments, or saves combined, so it's a tricky bit of research to sort of quantify, were those that were off the cuff, in the moment, picked up a phone, did a thing, this just happened. Oh, look what someone's doing in the office right now. The scripted, curated, professional looking things got by far the lowest engagement. Why? Because it's not real. This is what I mean. The emotional aspect of what we're talking about today is not about whether you make someone laugh, cry, make feel good, whatever. It's about connecting, authentically connecting with somebody now. And it's why after 22 years of doing this job, I'm walking away from it and doing the thing that feels more authentic to me, because we only got one life.
Absolutely.
Amazing.
Jez, thanks so much for joining us.
Is that it?
That's it. We're done.
Oh, I have a lot more answers here.
We'll bring you back another episode.
Yes, you will.
Unpaid.
Unpaid. Yes, we're not paying you. I do think, though, that, how brands handle sort of those tough crossroads moments are incredibly, incredibly valued to them as well as to their audiences. So, Jez, thanks. I really, really appreciate your time.
It's an absolute joy. Thank you.
Absolutely, Jez. I echo what Brian said. It's been a pleasure. We love to spend time with you, but this has been a very interesting conversation, and we really appreciate you sharing all your insights with us today.
Thank you very much.
And we do want you back someday. We promise we'll bring you back.
Laura, I think there's some really interesting perspective here, right? Like, I think as we look at this, I think a lot of brands and people that are in roles like you and I probably need to spend a little more time thinking about sort of that impact beyond the immediacy of the moment and some of the longer term pieces to it. I know that if there's any brand out there that thinks they've got this locked up, we'd love to hear from you and understand how you're doing that. Because I can say, being in marketing for many, many years, I think there's lots of work that still can be done.
Yeah, I agree. And, I think how Jez wrapped it up with the authenticity piece, I see it every day, and we try as marketers ourselves is trying to show the authentic content, trying to distribute that content, and we can prove that does better, as Jez said. But sometimes internally as the business, we need to put out other messages, and that's just, and those are the very scripted pieces. And it's finding that balance and knowing how to really draw people in the right way. So I think there's a lot here today that really resonates as a marketer and as a consumer myself. And it's just, I think we could even take this conversation further, whether with Jez or not, because I think there's a lot to build off of here.
Yeah. And for those of you listening, thanks for joining us. And most importantly, if you like today's discussion, be sure to follow us. And if you want to hear more from Jez and some of the topics he discussed, check him out at thatjezrose.com.